Good morning, students. Are you fine? Now, welcome back to our programming in C class. So, now that we have a basic idea about programming, especially in programming in C, we know the basic statements, input output statements, variable declaration, constants, etc. So we have a basic idea about programming in C, and of course what is the use of programming. Now let's move on to another session of programming, that is decision making and branching. So we have seen that a program, C program, is a set of statements, and we have make use of such input output statements, the basic statements used in programming. And we executed some simple programs, and you know how to enter the program in the text editor, and how to compile the program, and how to execute the program. See, in all those simple example programs in C, we have seen that all the set of statements which are normally executed sequentially in the order in which they appear. So all the statements till now, in all the programs, the statements were executed sequentially in the order in which they appear in the program. This sequential execution of statements happens when no options or no repetitions of certain calculations are necessary. In all those programs, we just enter a value, or we just prompt to enter a value or an integer or float value, and we just make the output by making some simple calculations. These calculations were never repeated in the program. So in such programs, in such simple programs where there is no need to repeat certain calculations, or repeat, or even there is no need to check for any condition, such statements, the input output statements, will be executed in a normal sequence. But we may have situations where we may have to change the order of execution of statements based on certain conditions. That is, if we need to repeat a group of statements, or we may need to check for a condition in our program, or repeat a group of statements until a certain specified condition are met. So in such cases, in situations where we need to repeat a group of statements, or if we need to check for a condition, in these cases we need a kind of decision making to see whether a particular condition has occurred or not, and then direct the computer to execute certain statements accordingly. So in some programs, if we have met with a situation to repeat a group of statements in a program, or if there may be a situation where we need to make decision, that means we may need to check for a condition, and depending upon the condition, result of that condition checking, we may need to take some decision. For such cases, for such decision making situations, we make use of a particular set of statements. C language supports the decision making capabilities by the following statements. First one is the if statement, second one switch statement, third one conditional operator statement, fourth one go to statement. So these statements are popularly known as decision making statements. That means these statements are used for checking for some conditions in the program, and based upon the condition we may select a particular part of the statements in a program. So till now we worked with programs that make use of sequential execution of statements. So in all our programs so far, we know all the statements are executed in a sequential manner in the order in which they appear. The program will start execution from the main of function, we know, and the statements immediately following the main of function will be executed, and so on. The execution continues in a sequential manner in which the statements appear in a program. But when we met with a situation where it need to check for a condition, or if we may need to take a decision depending upon some condition, we make use of these statements: if statement, switch statement, conditional operator statement, and go to statement. So these statements are popularly known as decision making statements, since these statements control the flow of execution. So they are also known as control statements. So these set of statements, if, switch, conditional operator statement, go to statement, are all popularly known as decision making statements and control statements, because these statements control the flow of execution. These statements can determine which part of the program should be executed and when. So these statements are known as control statements. So in C, the following these set of decision making statements are we make use of these set of decision making statements. The first one is the set of if statements: if statement, if else statement, and if else if statement for checking compound conditions. And we have nested if statements also to check for a set of conditions in a program, and we make use of the switch condition that we may see later in the session. So these are all control statements. That means these set of statements can control the flow of execution in a program. So otherwise, to alter the flow of control of a program, to alter the flow of execution of a program in some situations, for example, if we need to check the greater of 2 numbers, greater of 3 numbers, etc. In such cases, we need to check for a condition, a particular condition, and based upon that condition, the rest of the program statements will be executed. So in such case, the condition based upon the condition, a particular set of statements will be executed, and if the condition becomes false, another set of statements will be executed. So in this case, the condition, based upon the result of the condition, the flow of execution of the statements are altered, changed. So these statements are also called as control statements. So now we may start with the simple if statement. The if statement is a powerful decision making statement. It is used to control the flow of execution of statements. Usually if statement is a two-way decision making statement. It is a two-way decision making statement. It is used in conjunction with an expression. So it takes the form if test expression. That means if is the keyword and if is followed by a bracket, and within the bracket we give the test expression that is to be checked. So the general form of using a simple if statement is if test expression. If is the keyword, it is followed by the condition. The condition may be given as a expression. So if keyword is followed by a test expression. So if the condition, if the test expression is true, becomes true, a set of statements following the if statement will be executed. Let's see entry, that is we are going to check for a condition using the if statement, if condition, and if the condition is true, a set of statements or the statements following the if will be executed. If the condition is found to be true, a set of statement that is immediately following the if will be executed. If the condition is false, the loop will be exited. That means if the condition is found to be false, the statements immediately following the if condition will not be executed. So this allows the computer to evaluate the expression first, then depending on whether the value of the expression is true or false, it transfers the control to a particular statement. So if the condition is true, it may be an expression, condition or relation, and if the condition or relation is found to be true, that is for if it is a non-zero value, the control will be transferred to a particular set of statement. And if the result of the condition checking is a zero value, that means if it is a false value, another set of statements will be executed. So it allows the computer to evaluate the expression first. The expression will be evaluated first and then it selects for the set of statements that is to be executed next. So this point of program has two paths. That is, one is the true condition and the other is the false condition. So in this case, we can have two path of the program. So if is said to be a two-way decision making statement, because after checking for the condition, we have two paths in the program. One is the set of statements that is to be executed if the condition is true, and the other is the set of conditions that is to be executed if the condition is false. So for example of decision making using the if statements, we can say if age greater than 55, printf returned. If age greater than 55, that means we are using the if statement to check whether the age is greater than 55. So this is the test expression here. If is the keyword and if is followed by the test expression, that is we are testing for the condition whether age is greater than 55. If age greater than 55, if the age is greater than 55, then the person is retired. So printf retired. So this is an example of using the if statement. If bank balance is 0, borrow money. If room is dark, put on lights. If the room is dark, put on the lights. So we in other case we may check whether the person is male or female. If code is 1, person is male. Or if age is more than 55, the person is retired. So in these cases, in such cases where we need to check for a condition, we make use of the if statement. This is the simple if statement to check for a single condition. So depending upon the complexity and depending upon the conditions to be tested, we make use of different forms of if statements. First one is the simple if statement, second if else statement, third one nested if else statement, and if else ladder. So these are all different forms of the if statement. So if statement is used to check for a condition, And if we, depending upon the complexity and the conditions to be checked in a program, we may make use of different forms of the if statements. It may be a simple if statement, or if else statement, nested if else statement, or even if else ladder. So first we shall see what is a simple if statement. We know if is used to check for a condition, and in a program where if we need to check for a condition, or if we need to execute some part of the program repeatedly, we make use of these statements. So with this knowledge, we are going to see what is a simple if statement. So the general form of a simple if statement is if test expression within the curly brace we give the statement block. Statement block means that it can be either a single statement or a group of statements. Then after closing the curly brace we are giving statement X. So this is the general syntax of a simple if statement, that is if test expression, that means if is followed by the condition. In the example we have seen that example, if age greater than 55, person is retired. So like that, if test expression, that means in the test expression we are giving a condition to be checked, and if the condition becomes true, the statement immediately following the if condition will be executed. That means if the test expression becomes true, this statement block that is given inside the curly brace will be executed. If the condition, if the text expression becomes true, the statement block immediately following the if statement, that is the statement block that is given inside this curly brace, will be executed. And if the condition becomes false, if the text expression becomes false, this statement block will not be executed and the flow of execution is transferred to the statement X. So this is the use of simple if statement. That means we check for a condition using the if statement, and if the condition becomes true, the statement immediately following the if statement, that is the statement block, this statement block that is given within the curly braces, that is immediately after the if test expression will be executed. And if the test expression found to be false, then the next statement, that is the statement given outside the braces, will be executed. If the condition is true, a set of statement block given inside the curly brace will be executed, and if the condition is false, then the statement X will be executed. So this is how we make use of the if statement to check for a condition and to select a set of statements to be executed. So if the condition is true, a particular set of statements will be executed, and if the condition is false, another set of statements in the program will be executed. This is the purpose of making of using the if statement. For example, let's see, if category equal to sports, we know for relational operator, that means as equal to is used as a relational operator to check whether two things, two attributes are same. If category equal to sports, that means we make use of equal to, that is the relational operator, to check whether category is equal to sports. Remember, a single equal to sign is used for assigning a value to a variable in programming in C. We have learned that earlier. A single equal to simple is always used to assign a value to a variable or a constant, and when we use it as a relational operator, we have to use double equal to simple. That means if category equal to sports, that means if the category is equal to the sports, category is sports, then marks equal to marks plus bonus mark. if the category is sports, that means if a particular candidate is included in the sports category, then his marks should be added with the bonus mark. So mark is incremented with the bonus mark also. If a particular candidate belongs to the sports category, then his mark, he will be added a bonus mark with his total marks. Marks equal to marks plus bonus mark. So if a candidate belongs to the sports category, bonus mark will be provided to him. So his mark will be added with the bonus mark. Then print of the mark. So if the category is sports, bonus mark will be added. If the category is not sports, if it is not equal to sports, simply printf statement will be executed. This printf statement will be executed and the mark equal to marks plus bonus marks will not be executed. In such case, if the condition category equal to sports becomes false, the statement immediately following the if statement will not be executed, and if the condition is false, the execution transfers to the printf mark statement. Okay, so in this case, if the condition is true, a particular set of statements will be executed, and if the condition becomes false, the statements immediately following the if will be skipped and the last statement printf %f marks will be executed. Okay, so this is an example of simple if statement. Let's see the flowchart of simple if control. Here also, this is a two-way statement, two-way decision statement. That is, we check for a test expression here, and if the condition becomes true, a particular statement block will be executed, and if the condition is found to be false, the other part of the statement given in the program will be executed. And in either case, if the condition becomes true or false, in either case the statement X will be executed. You see, in the flowchart, we check for a condition, and if the condition is true, a particular statement block will be executed, and if the condition is false, another statement will be executed. In either case, that means if it is true or false, the next statement will be executed. In either case, if the condition is true or false, in either case, the next statement will be executed. So if it is true, a particular statement, a set of statement will be executed, and if it is found to be false, another statement will be executed. In either case, the next statement will be executed in the program. Okay, this is the flowchart for the simple if control. Let's see an example program. Void main of. We know main of is used to indicate that the execution begins from the main of function. So in this program, we are not making use of the any return values. We are not going to return any value to the program. So we specify it as a void, no return type. Void means no return type. Void main of. So from this point, the program starts execution. The first statement given is int a, b, c, d. We know and we have learned about the declaration of variables. Here we are declaring four integer variables, a, b, c and d, and all these variables are declared as an integer value. So when we have to declare variables of similar type, we can declare it in a single statement by separating it with commas. So int space a, b, c, d, that means four integer variables. We are declaring four integer variables. all are separated with commas, and the statement is terminated with a semicolon. Now the second statement is float ratio. We know int is the keyword that is used to indicate that the variable is integer, and for decimal point values, the values that makes use of decimal point, for real numbers we have to declare it as a float value. For real numbers are always declared as float data type. So int and float are the data types that is used to specify an integer value, and float is a data type that is used to specify the following variable is a real number. So float ratio means ratio is a variable belonging to the data type float, that is it is a real number. So both the statements are terminated with a semicolon. We know after declaring a variables we have to terminate the statement with a semicolon. And the third statement in the program is printf enter 4 integer values. So we prompt the user to enter 4 integer values. So when this program will be executed, it will print the statement, or it gives the message enter 4 integer values. The 4 integer values are meant for the values of A, B, C and D. And of course, after prompting to enter the input values, we have to accept the input values from the user, that is scanf, %d, again %d. That means the %d indicates that the following values are integer values. We know printf statement is used to display a message that is given within the double quotes, and scanf statement is used to accept the values from the user. So after displaying the enter 4 integer values as a message in the the screen, the user will enter 4 integer values. We have to accept the 4 integer values from the keyboard. So scanf statement is used to accept the integer values that the user have entered through the keyboard. So scanf function, use of scanf function is to accept the integer values from the user from the keyboard. So the scanf statement contains two parameters, a set of values, that is %d or %f, that is it specifies whether the values to be accepted are integer or float values. In this we have declared A, B, C and D as integer values. So we specify %d. 4 %d's are given as the first argument. That means the values following, or the second part of the argument, is an integer value. So to accept integer values from the keyboard, we make use of %d. Here we have to accept the values for 4 integer variables. So we make use of 4 %d symbols followed by a comma and %a, %b, %c and %d. That means we are accepting the values accepted are assigned to A, B, C and D respectively. The values that the user provided through the keyboard will be assigned as the values of A, B, C and D respectively. And the next one is our statement, condition checking statement. That is, if C not equal to if C minus D not equal to 0. So in this we check for a expression. The condition is given as a test expression. What is our expression here? C minus D not equal to 0. So in this point it calculates C minus D and it checks whether C minus D is not equal to 0. If the value C minus D is not equal to 0, then this set of statements, these two statements will be executed. So if C minus D is found to be not equal to 0, then ratio is calculated as ratio equal to float A plus B divided by float C minus D. If this value C minus D, so it have to first calculate C minus D, and it needs to check whether C minus D is not equal to 0. If this condition is true, if C minus D is not equal to 0, then ratio equal to float. What is this float? Float given inside the bracket means it is the typecast operator. The typecast operator is used to convert a set of values or a value into another data type. See, at first we declared A, B, C and D as integer values. So, of course, A plus B, if A and B are integer values, A plus B will also be an integer value. So, in this case, we declared A, B, C, D as integer values, but ratio is declared as a float value. So, when we calculate the sum of A plus B, the A plus B value should be converted to a float value, because we are assigning this value to the variable ratio, which is declared as float variable. So, in this case, we have to convert A plus B, the sum of A and B, as a float data type. So, this is the typecast operator that is used to convert integer to a float type. A plus B will of course be a integer value. This integer value should be converted to a float value, because the ratio is declared as a float value, and we are assigning this A plus B into the ratio, which is a float value. So, we use the typecast operator. The typecast operator float is used to convert an integer value. A plus B is an integer value. We are converting the integer value into a float value. Similar way, here C minus D is also a integer value. We have to convert the C minus D integer value into a float value. So, here we make use of the typecast operator float to convert the C minus D into a float type. So, after evaluating A plus B and C minus D and converting it to a float data type, it is assigned to the variable ratio. Ratio is declared as a float. So, we have to convert the integer value A plus B and C minus D into a float, and then the float value will be assigned to ratio. And then the next statement is printf ratio equal to percentage F. Percentage F denotes that the following argument, the second argument in the statement, is a float value. Printf contains two arguments. Printf statement contains two arguments. In the first section of the argument specifies the type of the value that is printed. The type of the value that is to be printed is denoted by percentage F. If we have to print an integer value, we make use of the percentage D, and in this case ratio is declared as a float value, so we represent it as a percentage F. We specify percentage F, that means it represents the second part of the argument is a float value. Ratio is a float value, so we make use of the percentage F symbol. So, in this program, it checks if C minus D not equal to 0. If C minus D is not equal to 0, that means if this test expression is found to be true, these two statements will be executed. Ratio equal to float A plus B divided by float C minus D, and printf ratio equal to ratio. This ratio will be calculated and displayed only if the condition is found to be true. If the condition becomes false, the set of statements given inside these curly braces will not be executed. So, if the statement is found to be false, if this statement is found to be false, the condition, if the condition is false, this will not be, these set of statements will not be executed, and in this case the program will not show any output. So, in this case, enter 4 integer values. See, in this case, the user had given the output as 12, 23, 34, 34. So, our input values for A, B, C and D are 12, 23, 34 and 34. Here, if based upon the test condition given in the if statement, C value is 34 and D value is also 34. In this case, C minus D value, what is the value of C minus D here? 0. So this condition is false. The test condition here came to be a false value, that is C minus D not equal to 0 is the condition is false in this case. So when this type of input is given for the program, the statement immediately following the if condition will not be executed, and the program will not display any values, any output, because we haven't given any printf or any statements after the curly brace. Okay, if statement is given to check for a condition, and we have simply given in this program a set of statements that is to be executed if the condition is true. If the condition becomes false, simply the program will be exited. Okay, I hope you understand this. Then the next one is our if else statement. If else statement can be said as an extension of the simple if statement. It is an extension of the simple if statement. The general form of the if else statement is if test expression, in a similar way that we have learned in the simple if statement. If is followed by a test expression, that means if the test expression is true, the next statements, that is the statement immediately following the if statement, that is the statement given inside the curly brace, will be executed. If the test expression is true, the true block statements will be executed. If the test expression becomes false, the else part will be executed. See, if test expression, that means we are checking for a condition within the if statement. If the condition becomes true, the true block statements will be executed, and if the condition becomes false, the else part statements will be executed. That means if the condition becomes false, the statements given in within the else block will be executed. That is, the false block statements will be executed. In either case, if the condition becomes true or false, in either case the statement X will be executed, because it is given, the statement X is given outside these two blocks. Statement X is given outside these two blocks. So if the condition is found to be true or false, in either case the statement X will be executed. This is the simple if else statement. That is, we check for a condition, and if the condition becomes true, the true block statements will be executed. If the condition becomes false, the else part statements will be executed. In either case, the statement X will be executed because it is given outside the two braces. So see the block diagram or the flow chart of the if else control. If the test expression is true, the true block statements immediately following the if statement are executed. Otherwise, if it is found to be false, the false block statements that is given within the else part will be executed, and in either case statement X will be executed. So this is the flow chart of the if else statements. Let's see an example program to illustrate the use of if else statement. Here the first statement in the program, always the library file #include stdio.h. We know the use of adding the header files inside a program. The next one, int main of. Here we specify the return type as int. So int specifies that the function returns an integer value. After execution of the program returns an integer value to the operating system. So we declare, instead of specifying void, we specify int main of. The execution starts from the main of function, as we know. The first statement declared inside the main of function is int a equal to 100. We know this statement. What this statement means? Int a, that means a is a variable declared as an integer data type. So a is an integer data type, integer variable, and we have assigned a value to the variable here itself. So int a equal to 100, that means 100 is the value assigned to a. 100, the value 100 is assigned to a, and a is an integer variable. A is an integer variable of value 100. We know the variable declaration as well as after assigning values to a variable, we have to terminate the statement with a semicolon. And then we check for the condition using the if statement. If a less than 20, if a less than 20, or here our test expression is a less than 20. So this checks whether the value of a is less than 20. If this condition is true, if the condition given inside the if statement is true, the statement immediately following the if statement will be executed, that is printf a is less than 20. The statement will be executed and we will get a message as a is less than 20. But in this case, a is given a value that is greater than 20, a equal to 100. So in this case, a is 100. So the condition given inside the if will become false. A less than 20 condition is false. So in this case, the printf statement will be skipped. That means this statement will not be executed and the flow of control is transferred to the else part. If a less than 20 condition is false because we have given 100 to a. So this condition becomes false. When this condition is false, printf a is less than 20 will not be executed and the flow of control is transferred to the else part. In that we have given that printf a is not less than 20. So when we execute this program, the statement a is not less than 20 will be given as output, and after executing the else part, the flow of control will be transferred to printf value of a is. So this statement will be executed. Whether the condition given in the if part is a true or false, in either case, this statement given outside the curly brace will be executed. So in this program, it checks for the condition whether a less than 20. If in this a is given 100, so the if part will be skipped, it will not be executed and the control will be transferred to the else part. In that we have given the message a is not less than 20. So this message will be printed as the output, and after executing this statement, the control will be transferred to printf value of a is %d, a. We know %d is used to specify that the following variable is an integer variable. We are going to print the value of a is an integer value. So we specify it as a %d. Value of a is %d, a, that is value of a is 100 will be displayed. \n, as you know, it is used to print the output in a new line. It is a new line character that is used to get the output in a new line. So is it clear? Learn well. See you in the next session.